Now this is the Google Pixel XL. Their marketing department has obviously gone into overdrive trying to create a genuine consumer phone that can obviously match the Apple iPhone 7 Plus. As a result, this is arguably at least £200 too expensive here in the UK and similarly across the world. Is the Google Pixel XL worth the branding premium? If I'm brutally honest, no, given what you can get for well under half the price with the OnePlus 3. For example, the Pixel XL is unbelievably £819 in the UK here in optimal configuration. I'll repeat that, £819. But let's put the price aside for now. After all, if something's the best, then maybe it's worth paying for, whatever the cost. The Pixel XL is essentially a very fast Android 7.1 phone, the pinnacle of what Google can design, or so we're told. That this design doesn't include any significant waterproofing, any wireless charging, any physical stabilization for the camera, as only a mono speaker, and in fact has a smaller screen than both its predecessors, all while adding a hefty price premium, is scandalous. So can the 5.5-inch QHD screen Pixel XL and the smaller 5-inch 1080p screen Pixel redeem itself in use? The HTC made hardware is lovely. The combination of the aluminium unibody with Gorilla Glass 4 on the front and half the back is delicious, but you're going to want to keep the phone in a case given the price you just paid for it. Make it a waterproof case too, since the Google Pixel range is only IP53 rated, which means that some dust can get in, and more worryingly, it's only guaranteed against water falling gently from near vertical, so rain. Any immersion at all will result into water getting into the innards, and that's really not good. At this price in late 2016, drop a Wily Fox device or Moto G into the wash basin by accident, and if they die, it's not much more than £100 to replace them. Plus their backs come off, so you get to dry them out properly and probably revive them anyway. Drop your shiny new Google Pixel in the basin or washing up or bath or toilet, even for a few seconds, and it's both dead and the chunkiest part of £1,000 to replace. Grip in the hand isn't an issue, thankfully. After 3 generations of iPhones that are slipperier than a bar of soap and numerous Android copycats, Google and HTC have got this one right, with straight sides and enough side bevels that your fingers can grip it quite easily. The curves are as the aluminium side falls away to the back, and that's just fine as it's comfortable for the fingers. The fingerprint scanner is quick enough, though placed on the back of the phone, meaning that you can't unlock it when it's on a desk, at least not without pressing the power button, swiping up, entering the PIN code, then on the tick. What a hassle. However, this is mitigated slightly by your own trained voice also unlocking the phone, at least in a quiet room like this one. Okay, Google, what am I doing for the rest of the day? And it's already into action. Gosh.
Here's what I found on the web.
Well, that was a waste of time. As with the Huawei and Honor phones, you can, once manually enabled in settings, swipe down the fingerprint sensor to bring down the notification shade. That's really rather handy, and then swipe up again to dismiss it. It works, but it's a bit of a gimmick here so far, if I'm honest. And Huawei does a lot more with the idea, including shortcuts from different fingers for different applications and so on. Let's see how much Google adds in with updates. Down at the bottom are 2 apertures. The right-hand slot is totally empty. Maybe there were plans for a second speaker here at some point. The left aperture has a grill with a mono speaker behind it, and it's decently loud. Here's a demo. This is full volume. It's a bit of David Bowie guesting with Mr. David Gilmour here. Not perhaps his finest moment, but also not the finest speaker in the world. Maybe it's the same component as on the HTC 10, maybe. There's certainly no stereo tweeter up the top. So all in all, a disappointing effort after the full stereo majesty of the Nexus 6 and 6P, the big Google flagships from 2014 and 2015. Mind you, there is a 3.5mm jack on the top for the Google Pixel and Pixel XL. I tested it with some studio quality headphones and I was impressed. Around the back, the camera was hyped a lot at the Pixel's launch. Despite no physical OIS, the terrifically fast Snapdragon 821 chipset means that circa 1 second multi-shot HDR plus is the norm, with auto-aligning of frames, noise reduction, and the increase of dynamic range. Yes, I'd still rather have a physically good camera in a phone, but hey, the Pixel's 12 megapixel unit produces good, albeit heavily processed photos most of the time without needing a protrusion at the back of the phone. The sensor is relatively large at 1/2.3 inches optical format, and the optics are wide angle with an f/2.0 aperture. Focusing speed is not up to that on the Galaxy S7, but the combination of laser and phase detection autofocus still makes for fast enough focusing and lessens the chance of missing action shots. Now this is a 4K video sample from the Google Pixel XL using their very fast chipset, accelerometer driven stabilization system, proving you don't necessarily need, for video work at least, optical image stabilization if your processing is fast enough. Now what's interesting is that on the phone screen it still looks a bit jerky, but the finished rendered video, as you'll be seeing at the moment, is incredibly smooth, but then as you turn corners the whole frame kind of shifts in a step movement. Just turn now gradually to the right and you'll see that in action. Now then I'll cut the corner and you'll see the frame shift in step fashion again as the software tries to work out what's going on and where I'm going. It's really impressive in a slightly artificial way though. Certainly a very good workaround for not having OIS, but again only made possible because the chipset is fast enough. So here we are, this is video stabilization, 4K handheld on the Google Pixel XL. Just seeing how it responds to a panning motion. There is zooming, but you can't zoom far obviously because it's already at 4K resolution. But hey, not too shabby at all. And of course the stabilization works just as well when zoomed. Also note that the captured audio is only in mono. This is disappointing for a flagship phone, and yes, I know the iPhone's also still mono, but that doesn't make it right. The front camera is 8 megapixels and f/2.4 and is excellent, also benefiting from the HDR Plus multi-shot processing, perfect for posed selfies and almost all light conditions. In addition to the cutting-edge Snapdragon 821 chipset, there's a full 4 gigabytes of RAM to make sure that nothing really needs to be swapped out of memory. Although the whole concept of stock Android is getting ever more nebulous as the years go by, the Pixel does feature Android now at 7.1, as Google intends and as it wants to extend it. Now, some of this code will make its way into the AOSP and thus into other Android handsets in years to come. Some will appear in the Play Store for installation by anybody, and some will be kept as exclusives for the new consumer champion Pixel line. And it's not entirely clear at this stage which is which. There's the new Google launcher with the ubiquitous Google search bar now an icon, though this has been surprisingly well thought out. The natural thing to do is to swipe this across, in which case you get the full Google Now search experience and cards, which many new users might not otherwise come across. But you can also tap the icon and get the usual search bar interface too. Nicely done, Google. There's also the application tray, which now appears when you swipe up from the bottom of the screen and with a little arrow to remind you that it's there and which way to swipe. Both make up a neat solution to fitting more content on screen without losing functionality to all and sundry. Then there's the icon set revamp, with many shrunk and all sanitized into circles. This is a change too far and will, I predict, be unpopular in some Android circles. See what I did there? Then there's Google Assistant, assigned to a long press of the home control. This replaces the unpopular and slow Google Now on tap. Mind you, the general query results from Assistant don't actually vary from what's already in the bog standard Google Now stroke search, currently seen on 1 billion phones worldwide, at least as tested by me in the UK right now. Which isn't surprising given that most of the intelligence in Google's voice recognition and knowledge graph is all server-side. Assistant also pops up to help directly in other applications on the Pixel, notably the new Allo Instant Messaging Plus client. Mind you, anyone can now try this out on any Android handset by just installing it from the Play Store, though the assistance is then limited to the messaging experience rather than across the whole OS as here. Now, slightly off at a tangent, Apple's adoption of flexible screens on the iPhone range with its 3D touch system alongside increases in weight and worries over durability, still has fans in the smartphone world, and rightly so. But I pointed out that many, though admittedly not all, of the same actions could be achieved through a simple long press on a capacitive touchscreen. Much cheaper, much simpler, and this is what Google has done, introducing app icon specific long press actions, there we go, to its core applications here. I'm not sure why it's taken this long to get this functionality into Android, but I welcome it, and I'd like to see it become available to other devices as and when they get Android 7. One thing you don't get, at least not yet, is an accelerometer-driven rise to awake function, as on Nexus phones, wherein the display lights up as you pick the phone up from a desk, showing you the lock screen and any recent notifications. It's so useful, and it's not in the Pixel, though it's surely just a matter of software and an obvious thing for Google to add back in. And while Google's coding that up, how about a genuine always-on display? This was an idea started by Nokia, but copied these days by the likes of Samsung and LG, and is eminently perfect for AMOLED displays like this, since there's negligible power drain. It's not clear whether the Pixel range has the required display memory, but the feature is not in the phone at launch, at least. The best I could do was hacking into the display screensaver options menu and setting the clock option when the Pixel is charging. Ho-hum. Battery life is always hard to judge in the first week with a new phone, but the DOE's enhancements for Android 7, plus the sizable 3450 mAh cell battery, the smaller Pixel has a 2770 mAh cell, this should easily get users through a day on a single charge. There's certainly negligible drain when the phone is stationary and when the screen's not on at the moment. Recharging is via a USB Type-C port as you'd expect in 2016, with the same 3 amp power delivery as on last year's Nexus phones. So that equates to about an 80% charge in an hour from an empty battery from the supplied 18-watt charger. Though don't get too excited and hung up about fast charging. The speed of charging and heat generated really aren't good for the battery in the long run, in my opinion. I did like the on-screen confirmation of which charging mode was being used, charging rapidly, charging, or charging slowly, depending on what you've got the Pixel plugged into. Very neat. But I have to address the elephant in the room, and that's the value for money offered by the Pixel and the Pixel XL. Each comes in 32GB and 128GB variants. Now, I've tried living with 32GB on several recent Nexus phones, and in each case, I just managed. In today's cloud-centric world where music and media can mostly be streamed and where bandwidth is mostly plentiful, it's not quite as essential to have offline versions of your media. However, take the disappointing 23GB or so free out of the box on the 32GB variants, 23GB. Then install application updates, your core Android favourites, a few decent games, then allow for some workspace for the OS, temporary files cache, and so on. In my case, I ended up with less than 10GB free. Well, 10GB, that sounds sufficient, right? But that's without any captured photos or videos, or any downloads, or local media for train or plane journeys. It's true that Google mitigates the photos and videos problem by offering unlimited online backup, both at full resolution, and there are upfront and center functions to delete local copies of backed up shots and clips to keep free space reasonable. Okay. But this only really works in practice while files are reasonably small. It doesn't help if, for example, you want to shoot 20 minutes of 4K video at your kid's sports day and you need 7GB clear. The phone simply may not have that much free. You don't want to be juggling right down at the bottom end of storage. And that's just the tip of the usage iceberg. On every phone I've owned over the last 5 years with a sealed 32GB, after a few months in the real world, I'm constantly micromanaging the flash storage, trying to free up space. It's rarely a showstopper, but always an annoyance. All of which isn't a criticism of the Pixel per se. After all, you can simply get the 128GB version of the regular and XL phones. That presents enough flash storage for the hungriest user. You'll be able to keep a few tens of gigabytes of music and media for journeys where bandwidth isn't guaranteed, having local captured photos and videos from potentially a few years of use, without having to say to friends and family, hang on, here's a video I shot last week. It's loading. No, it's loading. It really is. Come back in 10 minutes and it'll be ready to go. Very embarrassing. And so on. Plus, with 128GB, you can install as many HD games as you like and not have to worry about the often 3GB of resources each wants to pull down after installation. So you need to get the 128GB versions of the Pixel and the Pixel XL, and that raises the price bar even higher. In the UK, we're looking at £699 and £819 respectively. Wow. Maybe you shouldn't buy the Pixel SIM-free from Google, but buy through a network or carrier instead, as this is now a possibility in some countries. As with iPhones, which are similarly expensive, if you can amortize the high cost here into a couple of years of contract use with a lot of data and other activity, then the monthly bottom line shouldn't be much worse than for any other flagship phone. If you can afford the Google Pixel XL, or indeed the smaller standard Pixel, and you want a hands-on taste of where Google's taking the smartphone experience into 2017 and beyond, with increasing use of AI to help you out in very real ways, and which will only get better, lightning fast and packaged in beautiful metal, then go right ahead. All of this can indeed be yours. But for my use, I keep coming back to the lack of waterproofing here, the lack of OIS in the camera, the lack of stereo speakers. In the UK at the moment, for a comparison, the Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge is £450 or so, brand new. Only 60% the price of the Pixel XL, yet with arguably higher specifications in most areas. Then there's the OnePlus 3, another 60% down again, yet with very, very few compromises. Then there's a whole world of second-hand Nexus 6 6P units, a mountain of new and decently specified large-screened new handsets from the likes of Honor, Xiaomi, Wiley Fox and others. There really is no reason whatsoever to break the bank for the Pixel and Pixel XL. I'm sorry, Google, I'm skipping this overpriced and disappointing 2016 generation.